Right. So we left off with Stalin and Hitler's non-aggression pact. Remember, not a treaty, right? Just we're not going to fight each other because neither of us really wants another war. Again, the Nazis want to avoid that two-front war. Stalin wants to be left alone to expand his empire to the east of the Nazis, right? So that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Now, so September 1939, then, with the Soviets taken out of the equation because of this non-aggression pact, in September 1939, then Hitler decides to invade Poland. Now, this is going to be the first real picture of what becomes known as the Blitzkrieg or Lightning War. All right. And again, Lightning War, it's all about speed, overwhelming firepower, throwing everything the Nazis had been building. You know, the best planes, the best tanks, the best trucks. You know, we don't think of trucks, well, some of you do, but we don't think of trucks as being critical to a war effort. But how do you haul your stuff, right? And the Germans had spent an entire decade basically building up the best and most powerful of literally everything, not just the guns, but all the little stuff that you don't think about, right? So they basically throw everything at Poland and just completely overwhelm the Polish defenses, which weren't that great to begin with. But this Nazi blitzkrieg or lightning war is just insane firepower, right? And it's speed too. So insane firepower, lightning fast speed. That's what this is all about. Poland is going to crumple and basically fall to the Nazis' overwhelming firepower. So the Germans are going to take care of Western Poland. The Soviets, meanwhile, they are going to basically at the same time, not as fast, but they're going to overwhelm Eastern Poland. And again, because of this non-aggression pact, they both kind of again they're not friends, but they agree to basically split Poland up, right? So this blitzkrieg is critical. And then after Poland, the invasion of Poland is kind of recognized as the real beginning of World War II. And that's an important thing for you to understand if you're like a one of these World War II or history aficionados, or maybe you just want to call yourself a nerd, and that's okay. I am, which probably means you're never going to call yourself a nerd, but still, the invasion of Poland kicks off the war because after Poland, again, this comes after Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland, Austria, the Rhineland, all those times where the Germans kept taking and taking and taking. And remember, what did the rest of the world do? Hey, please don't. Well, with Poland, finally, the French and the British, they say enough is enough, and they declare war on Germany. So that invasion of Poland in September 1939, that's the official beginning of World War II. Okay, now with that, so Poland is conquered. The Nazis don't have to worry about that Eastern Front. Now they're basically going to take a page from the Schlieffen Plan, right? They're going to go across neutral Belgium again. Sorry, Belgians. Um, they're going to invade Belgium, and the whole idea is to basically, again, just like World War One, capture France. If France falls quickly, that will hopefully convince the British to stay out of it, because again, it's going to take a lot of effort to mobilize and move, again, potentially millions of men across the English Channel, right? So that's the basic idea here, okay? Now, in order to kind of sell this, the French and the British first, they're going to get sucked into all the way down here what becomes known as the Sitzkrieg. All right, so just like in World War One, really, the Germans are going to do this feint. Remember, at like a head fake. So they're going to send a bunch of troops down here. The French and the British, they think that this big invasion is coming this way, but actually it's coming farther to the north. All right, now, so that Sitzkrieg again is basically just a head fake. Meanwhile, back in the east, Stalin is going to invade Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, which will become part of the Soviet Union as well. He's also going to attack Finland, which is going to get annexed as well. And then by early 1940, Denmark, Norway, and then the Low Countries of Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, they're all going to be annexed as well. All right. Now, so the Germans very, very quickly then, again, these videos are going to be linked in that chapter 23 slideshow. The Germans are going to invade or move through the Ardennes forest very quickly. They're going to annihilate basically the British and French defenses that were there. The British and French are going to be trapped on Dunkirk or at Dunkirk. There's a movie about this, which is actually sort of terrible. Like the invasion part's cool, but history people always have to try to throw in some sort of like weird love story. So same thing, like Dunkirk, Pearl Harbor, that movie too. again, there's so much drama and so much human interest story there, but they still have to like, oh, we'll turn this into a love story at the same time. Total trash. Skip that stuff. Stick with documentaries, kids. But anyway, so the British and the French, they're basically going to be cornered at Dunkirk. They're going to load literally any ship that they can, including like fishing boats with as many men as they can to get safely across the English Channel into Britain. Meanwhile, Italy also is going to invade France from the south, while the Germans are basically capturing Paris. So France is going to fall by the early summer of 1940. They're going to set up, the Nazis are going to set up this puppet government, which is known as the Vichy government inside France. So they're French, but they're Nazi allied French. So not really French. And later on, after the war ends, and spoiler alert, the Nazis lose, and the Vichy government, most of those people are actually going to be executed as traitors after the war. So, justice. Anyway, so Charles de Gaulle, who is the real French president, then he's going to fly across the English Channel. He's going to set up a government in exile in England. So throughout the war, you're going to have like a real French government that is running France from the UK, and then you're going to have a Nazi allied France called the Vichy's who are ruling inside France. Okay. Now, that means then France has fallen, right? So now the Nazis need to convince the British to basically either stay out of it or to beat them, right? So all throughout the summer of 1940, going from it was about July all the way up to October, the Germans essentially are going to bomb the crap out of the UK, all right? And this becomes known as the Battle of Britain. So this is significant too because this is the first like large scale like air combat ever in the history of the world. Um, the Luftwaffe, which is the Nazi Air Force, they are going to drop thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of bombs on the United Kingdom. The whole time, the British government is basically like, "Hey, don't worry about those bombs. They're going to actually create this slogan: keep calm and carry on." Which, if you remember, several years ago, this was a big thing. Everybody had like T-shirts. Every sports had like "Stay golfing and carry on," or "Keep calm and continue shooting hoops," or whatever. But anyway, that actually came from the Battle of Britain. All right. And ultimately, the British, by basically just convincing the civilians, like, hey, there's a constant threat of like war or death by bombs at any moment, but just keep calm, keep that stiff upper lip, just carry on. Don't let the Nazis, defeat your morale. We are going to not give up. We're going to continue to fight against the Nazis simply by going about our daily business. Eventually, it worked. Hitler's basically like, yeah, this is pointless. We're not going to defeat the British totally by air. We'd have to invade on the ground. Hitler decides not to do that. And so basically, the Battle of Britain was a success for the British. It did prevent the Nazis from invading the UK. And that means it's going to set the stage for an eventual re-invasion of Europe by the good guys, the Allied powers. Okay, more on that later. Now, so number five, then, going back to World War One, what similarities and differences do you see between the Schlieffen Plan and the Blitzkrieg or Lightning War? So take a second to think about that one. All right, now this takes us to the Holocaust. Now, the Holocaust, I mean, everybody's heard about this. I mean, seriously, if you go to college someday, there will be classes where an entire semester you will only talk about the Holocaust. And I don't want to shortchange it, but this is just such a huge, huge thing. I really, again, I'm going to gloss over it. Please take the time, watch some of these videos. Again, I'll embed these in the chapter 24 slideshow or chapter 24 video slideshow. So please take a look at this. But one of the big things you've got to understand about this is the Holocaust does not just begin with like, oh, we're going to throw all the Jews in the concentration camps because we don't like them. The hatred of Jews as anti-Semitism, this had existed forever, basically inside Europe, right? Most Europeans were some flavor of Christianity. Jews are not Christians. So there had been like a little bit of tension and animosity between Jews and Christians basically since the time of Christ. And so Hitler, like, he doesn't arrive on the scene and like is like, oh, I hate Jews and everybody else does. He's going to take something that existed, this existing anti-Semitism, and he is going to exploit it. Because again, Hitler understood if we already have an external enemy, right? The British and the French. We want to get back at those guys. We want to get revenge. But how else do you rally people inside your country to really build up patriotism and build up that nationalism and that allegiance to the state? It's to convince people that there is a threat inside your country that must be taken care of. And for Hitler, it was the Jews. He said the Jews are our problem. All these economic problems, you blame it on the Jews, right? You go to the grocery store in the 1930s when the Great Depression was raging, and who owns the grocery stores? It's those Jews, right? Now, again, why did Jews own the grocery stores? Because for a long time, Jews were prevented from owning land or doing certain types of jobs inside Germany. And this existed in a bunch of different countries in Europe. So, again, Hitler doesn't invent this, he just exploits it to basically get his way and get people on Team Hitler, essentially, right? And support the Nazi party. So a lot of Germans are going to be like very easily swayed by Hitler, and they're like, oh yeah, that does make sense. You know, the Jews, it is this Jewish conspiracy to like take over the economy and to oppress non-Jews. And so a lot of people just like willingly accepted this. And again, at the same time, you've got Hitler, who, remember, is like super great. He was giving all these huge rallies. You can look at all kinds of pictures of, gigantic stadiums just filled with Nazi supporters. Hitler was, people loved going to his rallies. He sold people what they wanted to hear, and he was really, really smart that way. And like, all right, and again, for horrible, horrible, evil ways, but he understood, like, Germany needed a strong leader. I'm that strong leader. How can I get people on my team, convince people that someone, right, who might be your neighbor, is trying to destroy your country from the inside? Okay, so going all the way back into the early 1930s, then the Nazis had been preaching for a long time this extreme anti-Semitism. Once they come to power again by utilizing the political process inside Germany, once they get in power, they are going to push these Nuremberg laws that were passed in 1935. They're going to strip Jews of their citizenship. They're going to take away their jobs. They're going to seize their property. And that's where they're going to start requiring Jews to wear that Star of David armband, which I'm sure you've seen in movies and stuff. And ultimately, this is going to set the stage then for this Holocaust that ultimately is going to kill over 11 million people. A good 6 million of them are Jews, but also the Nazis are going to target anybody who is not part of this Aryan or master race, right? So people who are handicapped, people who were just non-white. I mean, there were other like minority groups that did not meet the Nazi Aryan criteria. They're going to be exploited as well. The Roma or Gypsies, they're going to be targeted by the Holocaust. Homosexuals, people who are mentally or physically handicapped, all kinds of different people who are viewed as like a drain on society. Anybody who is like not German, they're going to be targeted by the Nazis in this Holocaust. Okay, the real beginning that we can kind of point to, the beginning of the Holocaust, is going to be Kristallnacht. All right, so this is an event, and again, there's a good video down here you can watch about this. Basically, this is where violence, like outright violence, not subtle violence where it's like somebody gets beat up. This is like a widespread, systematic attack all across German cities where Nazis are going to attack and burn down Jewish homes, Jewish businesses. They're going to destroy Jewish synagogues or churches. And overnight, 100 Jews are going to be killed. Hundreds and hundreds are going to be injured. We're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars of property is going to be destroyed. And the thing is, and like it says here, 30,000 people are going to be arrested. It's not the Nazis, it's the Jews who are arrested. So the Jews are blamed for the attacks on their own property and land. And again, it's a tragedy. But this is where, this event happens, and everyone's like, oh, I guess that's how it is now. And it is just going to kind of pave the way for a normalizing of violence against Jews. And people are just going to buy this, they're going to accept it. Along with this, the Nazis were really good about like, and again, not good, but you know, they excelled at evil. Basically, is what I'm saying here. But they're going to exploit stuff. They're going to make sure everybody has a radio, for example. The Nazis are going to have a government-owned media that's going to be pumping out all of this stuff. If you went to school, your history teacher would be talking to you about how the Jews are the source of all of Germany's problems. So this state-run propaganda effort is what's really going to drive this, the success And again, there's the quotes there. It's not really successful.